Hello everyone, welcome to this month's Flash Fiction. We are in August, a little later for Flash Fiction than we usually do, all for good reason, because I'm working on some exciting manuscripts like Mental Damnation 4 and Rutherford Manor 2. So lots of exciting things coming down the pipeline, and we still made it to Flash Fiction this month, which is a continuation from last month's space horror, which was called Harvesters. Now this is a standalone one, but definitely check out Harvesters as well. It's building this whole sci-fi world that I eventually want to dabble more into, but for now it stays in short stories. So let's jump right into it. This one is called Scrappers. We try to stay hidden by being underground. People like me have to go to the surface though. When we do our best to keep noise levels down and stay light-footed. You'd be amazed at how well satellites can pick up the alterations of landscape from the skylines. Even the smallest detail, like a footprint, can be detected by their drones. Stealth is all we can do until we find a better way to fend them off. There are probably a dozen names given to them. Everyone has a grudge for something they did, or someone they took. The godly, gene freaks, anti-sapien, or whatever your choice of phrase is, we all know them as the Harvesters. The Harvesters always return to Earth. They come for us. They find us, no matter how well we hide. "Angie, get with it," came a croaky voice. My eyes shot up to the sound, seeing a man looking over at me, the orange hue from the setting sun casting sharp shadows on his leathery skin. The neon green LED lights from his goggles shine right at me. Ruggy, my partner. We had a mission. Gather scraps. "Sorry," I said. "I wasn't really here." My thoughts were being dragged off into big picture stuff, like the Harvesters, the world, our attempts to survive, things that Ruggy would really not care about hearing. "Keep your mind on why we're here, on the surface. I don't want to be here like you, but there aren't any other options." He shifted his rifle under his arm, holding the gun at a 45-degree angle, gaze forward. "Magnify on your map and stay on course. The operator said there's an amplitude of metal not far from here." I adjusted the interface that displayed within my goggles. With a twitch of my eyelid, the goggles changed the glass to project night vision. Another subtle eyelid movement caused the UI to zoom in on the map that displayed at the corner of my eye. It brought up a detailed landscape of the rubble that we walked through. Well, a map of what everything used to look like. "These maps aren't helpful," I said. "They're well over a century outdated." I looked at the top-down view of the geographical location of the map. It showcased skyscrapers, roads, and complete pathways. In reality, all I could see was a charcoal skyline, rubble ground, and nature attempting to grow new green life in between the concrete cracks. "It's the best that we have to work with," said Ruggy. "Us scrappers always get the low-tech stuff." "Yeah," I said. There wasn't much of a point discussing the topic. He was right. Scrappers were low ranks. That's why we stick together. Plus, I knew what Ruggy was thinking. Shut up and do your job. It was tough to just do that. We were in the middle of a long-forgotten civilization trying to find old metal scraps, praying that we wouldn't be detected by the Harvesters. Not exactly motivating. "This seems like a waste of time for us," I said. "We've never gone this far out into the lost." "Yeah, well," Ruggy said, "when we've raided all the other closer past cities, we don't have much of a choice but to go further in." I scanned the ground in front of me, holding the rifle tight. There were washed-out yellow-painted rocks mixed in with gray rocks. These were once roads, at least what was left of them. I've seen complete streets in the archive photos before. Never had I seen such large chunks of remnants in person. "All of this seems so surreal," I said. "These people used to live in peace before it all went south." "They didn't think so," Ruggy said, taking a turn down an archway. "Down this way," he said. I followed behind him, looking at the massive archway. It was large enough to house a 12-man transport shuttle. "What makes you say that?" I asked. "They weren't happy and tried to change the world, which got us into this mess," Ruggy said. "I suppose." Ruggy had a point. The past civilization were the ones that brought humanity into the technological revolution. I just like to imagine there was a better world at some point in time. They only wanted to do what was good for us, I said. Are you really that naive? Come on, kid, Ruggie said. The history books always look as good as they can, even if they are on the losing side. I'm sure the Harvesters paint a pretty glorified image of their past, justifying why they do what they do. Good is all relative. If you don't trust the history books, then what do you trust? I asked. Well, Ruggie said, I don't trust much. I do know not to trust one stupid book. That's been the issue with humanity for centuries. We put our trust in a book. Now we're living the greatest downfall from this repetition of history. My pace slowed down as we came across a massive semi-complete structure. It was about 1/3 of a sculpted head, a bearded man with a long nose and long hair, although it was difficult to tell from the missing pieces. Amazing, I thought, while looking up at the mountain in the near distance. Remnants of a sculpture's base could be seen around a pile of rubble. An educated guess would be the head had tumbled down the mountainside during an explosion. That was my best guess. I really had no idea. I picked up my pace, realizing Ruggie had continued on without me. Once I caught up beside him, I said, It really isn't all from one book, though. There's bureaucracy, corruption, and human greed to take into account. True, but they shroud it in justification from their holy books. Yeah, it's tragic we kept repeating the past. It's ridiculous. We used to believe in super beings, gods in the sky that judged our lives. Our holy book was science, and it was just as bad as the rest. The science era isn't much different from religion, I said, looking at Ruggie's leather face. Why's that? He asked. Because the Harvesters turned themselves into gods in the sky, judging us. Ruggie chuckled. How poetic. I couldn't tell if he was being his typical unenthusiastic self, or if he was actually impressed with what I had challenged him with. It was hard to know with Ruggie. He always had the same mood with anything that he did. The two of us continued down the uneven path, hopping over large clumps of the city remains and plants that had grown over the past world. Looking at all of it made a part of me want to just go back to the cruiser and give up. Gathering scraps was tedious. The loss was depressive to look at. It wasn't like I had much of a choice. Scrapping was all I was good at. I didn't have any other skills that could help humanity survive. There were no educational systems for me to go to, and the people that possessed knowledge from the past carefully chose who they shared the info with. We have to operate this way. There is no time to learn everything. We had to learn one skill and stick to it. The Harvesters were technologically advanced, mentally superior, and physically Herculean. There was no time for anyone to wish about what they wanted to do. The higher commands run us through rigorous tests, analyze what we're best at, and that is what we do till the day we die. It's that simple. Here's food for thought, Ruggie said as he reached the top of a steep rock. Playing off what you just said, about the Harvesters, being living gods and such, he extended his hand for me. Yeah? I asked as I took his hand, letting him pull me up. You ever fathom that humanity has just repeated itself? What do you mean? I asked, panting while looking down at my health cuff. The screen lit up with a flick of my wrist. It stated we were just over 50 kilometers from our cruiser. I thought that was a long distance, but seeing that Ruggie hadn't even broken a sweat made me feel like a goof. Looks like I'd have to get back onto a tighter exercise routine when we got back to base. The Harvesters, Ruggie said. They were us at one point. Gods are only projections of what we wish to be. They had access to become one, and that is what they did. Perhaps humanity has gone through similar routes in the past, and religious books are just history books about them. You mean like what the Babblers are doing? I raised my eyebrow with a smirk. The idea was humorous. You know Babblers are just desperate to find meaning in all this chaos by speaking about it like some prophecy. Exactly my point. The Babblers are no different than any other prophet. I take it you never got familiar with some of the archive's religious texts. No, I can't say I have. I'm a scrapper. I rarely have time to read. Yeah, you're also in your 20s. Don't worry about it. I was a baboon at that age too, chasing all the fucks I could get. My nostrils flared. Who did Ruggy think he was, summing me up as some horny, uneducated kid? He had a way of belittling people. Unfortunately, I had to work with him. Scrappers stick together once they were chosen. Scrappers code. Anyways, Ruggy said after my prolonged rage silence, perhaps the past religions like Christianity, Hinduism, you name it, all had holy men who saw things for what they were. Ruggy brought out his hand. I'm not saying this kind of stuff is what I believe in, but just playing off your idea. I smirked. Really? You know a damn lot more about religion than I do. You sure not becoming a babbler? Zip it. Just throwing the idea out there that maybe this isn't the first time humanity has surpassed itself and went for the stars, leaving the rest of us down here. It's a wild theory. I wasn't sure what else to say. Reggie knew a lot more about humanity's past than I did, and it wasn't worth challenging him. As he put it so delicately, I was just a young horny kid. His statement had me wondering, though, was humanity just repeating itself? Did the past civilizations turn men into gods like the harvesters? It's a crazy idea, and no one truly knows. History was distorted. The details of how they went for the cosmos and left us here was convoluted and confusing rabbit hole that isn't worth going down. Trust me, I've tried. Every fact contradicts itself as to how humanity's split started. I followed behind Rugby as we continued down the mapped-out path projected on the goggle screens. Of course, the goggles could only estimate roughly where we went. It's not like we had any satellites to work with. That's a giant red flag to attract harvesters. The chip processors were attached to our health cuffs. They do some weird science algorithm tech thing that I could never understand. All I know is the map talks to the cuffs, and they estimate my steps with the city's map size. Looks like we're almost there, Ruggy said. So the operator just found some jackpot from their AI algorithms or what? I still don't get why we had to come out this far. I don't know, Angie. This isn't my department, nor yours. They tell us where to go, and we get the scraps. Right, I said while tightening the grip on my rifle. We had never gone this far out into the lost before. The fact that we left our cruiser made me uncomfortable. If a harvester were to show up, we were on our own. We couldn't outrun them. That's pointless. We had no transportation. We were sitting ducks on foot. Ruggy brought up his rifle as we turned the corner. The smell of burning metal began to pick up. This was abnormal. Burning smells meant something recent was around. Nothing burns in the lost. Those fires and explosions happened long before our time. I used my eyelids to navigate through the goggle's interface. The screen projected a keyboard and a message thread between Ruggy and I. My eyelids twitched in swift movements, stringing together alphabetic characters into words. Do you smell that? I typed out in the chat. Yeah, keep your guard up, Ruggy typed back as he descended down a rocky, narrow path. I felt the sweat build up on my pits and palms. Whatever this wasn't part of our standard protocol. The operators typically had us find piles of rubble we had to dig through to snag metal. This was something different. We continued down the path, creeping slowly to avoid loose rocks. The last thing we needed was to make noise. Reggie reached the end of the steep decline to where the path opened up. Smoke rose from the open charcoal ground. Even the goggles enhanced vision. Ruggy nor I could make out what was in front of us. I raised my rifle as I reached Ruggy's side, stopping right in front of the opening. My eyelids moved, typing, I can't see anything. Nor can I, Ruggy wrote. You sure this is the right place? I asked. Yeah, check the map yourself. The map was pretty accurate when it synced with the health cuff. Plus, there was only rubble all around us. There was nothing of value here other than the mysterious smoke and burning smell. What do? We're scrappers. We scrap whatever it is. Ruggy tightened his grip on his rifle and stepped forward. He didn't look back, expecting me to follow. I had to. Ruggy was right. We were scrappers. With that in mind, I took a deep breath and marched alongside Ruggy into the smoke. The closer we got, the smell heightened into a strange, stinging sensation. It overpowered my senses and I couldn't smell anything else. God, I wanted to have a mask or something at this point. Scrappers always got the leftover supplies and never the ones we needed. At least we had the goggles. that kept our eyes clear as we moved through the unknown. I stayed slightly behind Ruggy, making sure nothing came from his sides or behind us. We entered the thick of the haze. Nothing was visible beyond a few feet. The further we stepped in, the smoke changed into an orange-red hue. "Fire," Ruggy typed. "It's a crash?" I responded. A roar erupted from the brighter flames further ahead. We raised our rifles. A humanoid silhouette rose from the flaming ground, deformed from the light. Large limbs reached up from the sky. They were too large to be human. The roar morphed into a howling groan, a sound of agony. "Harvesters," Ruggy typed. "You sure?" I replied. "Positive. What else crash lands on Earth?" "Harvesters never crash land." "Maybe, but there's nothing else in space." "What about that theory you just came up with? The past civilizations and the stars?" "Shut it, kid. Do as I say." "What?" "Shoot first, ask questions later." I exhaled slowly. Part of me was annoyed. There were so many questions that we hadn't answered. We were making choices that was beyond our rank. Whatever we were witnessing was not a scrapper's role. Harvester or not, this was something we had to report. There was also the fact we could end up getting killed. Scrappers were about stealth and retrieval, not killing things. "We should call it in," I typed. "We can't, remember?" Ruggy replied. "We're on a local channel. Helps with the stealth." "Let's get back to the cruiser then. The operator will want to know about this." "Walk 50K? The thing will be gone by then. We shoot it, call it in." I wasn't sure what else to say to Ruggy. We wouldn't be able to make it back to the cruiser, report the finding, and expect to find whatever it was here when we got back. Action was needed. Besides, Ruggy had his mind set regardless of any protocol. He wanted to find out what this was. I had no other choice. I couldn't leave him behind. Scrapper's code. And that is part 1 of Scrappers. The second part will be out next month, so if you enjoyed this, please share with your friends, and I'll catch you next month. Ciao.